What's going on, everybody? Thank you again for joining me for another BG-Cast Wednesday live podcast. Man, we have quite the interesting one tonight. And why I say that, it's a strange phenomenon. I think that we all have experienced in our, spiritual evolution and our personal paths to truth, and even in with just personal progress in general. So have you ever experienced or ever had this experienced with your family, your friends, potentially even strangers who seem to get unreasonably mad, unreasonably angry, at your spiritual evolution, these new truths, these new revelations you're finding out, or just even potentially having thought provoking conversation in general. Uh, this has been dubbed the Agent Smith effect. And I know a lot of us, including myself, have experienced this from all three, that whole trifecta: family, friends, strangers, all of it. So it's a very interesting phenomenon. And what I'm going to try to do tonight is I'm going to try to explain it, potentially give my thoughts on what it could be. I know a lot of people think it is potential demiurge archon manifestation in an individual's consciousness. We're going to go over that. And first, though, I'm going to start with a couple of videos. They're really, really short. I rarely do this. I rarely play videos on my solo shows. It's the first solo show in a while, actually. Everything has been interviews for the past few episodes. I like to always just read material and kind of explain things to you guys. But tonight there's a couple of video clips I'm going to bring up. They're not super long, but they kind of go in depth a little bit of what this is. The first one is a interview with Billy Carson. Shout out to Billy Carson on that one. And then the second one is this girl's video from YouTube, JK Ultra. I'm going to give my comments on each of them after I'm done. And then I got an article for you guys on this. And this was the strange thing about this phenomena as well, is there's very little what I would say recorded evidence, but I think we have a lot of, people who have experienced this. I would say anecdotal evidence for this. So let's dive into it, man. So first we've got the Billy Carson interview. It's a really short clip. It's about a minute and a half here. Yeah,
what is that?
He lines it out pretty well. So I'm going to start it from the beginning for you guys real quick. Let's turn up the volume just a hair here. And let's go.
Fantastic. What is the Ancient Smith effect? What is that?
Well, this is one of the things that has to do with the Dark Brothers and how they subconsciously get into your psyche. So they control the media, they control the news, they control what you eat, what you think, what you see, and everything else.
Are they the deep state that we hear so much about?
The deep state, they're the deep state. They're all these hidden figures behind the scenes pulling all the strings that nobody ever can really see who they are, but they're there.
So it's George Norrie actually interviewing Billy Carson. But this explanation so far, I'm going to say, is a little bit different than what I would think it is. But nonetheless, it's still a really good definition in my eyes. So let's continue.
There's 100 families running this entire planet, but there's still a handful of them that are at the top of that mini pyramid that are really making all the final decisions. And so that's really what it's all about. So the Agent Smith effect is when, like, if you're talking to somebody like a friend or a family member about what you saw on TV, and it's like a sitcom or a TV show, everybody's having a great conversation about it. But as soon as you stop and talk about, is 9/11 a conspiracy, or what they're putting in our food is poison, all of a sudden that person will then change. Their countenance will change.
Sure.
Their attitude will change, and they'll almost become like a prison guard to stop you from talking about those topics and try to skew you back into what the more comfortable topics were, which was gossiping and so forth and so on. So it's like this thing jumps into them. It's like this matrix programming takes over their body. And that's part of the dark forces that happen. And it's called the Agent Smith effect, kind of after the Matrix movies where Agent Smith would pop into the bodies of other people to fight against Neo. Fantastic.
All right, guys. So, I mean, basically, I think that lined it up pretty well. I know a lot of you have experienced this, e- especially in one of the three groups that I had mentioned. It's very rarely strangers. Although, if you've ever been having, and this has happened to me, if you've ever been having a conversation in a public place and the conversation was overheard by somebody. That has happened to me before, and that's when I've gotten the Smith effect from strangers. I've also had it happen to me at work. So I was doing a job downtown in actually not downtown, in Aurora about 4 years ago. I was talking to the contractor, and this is, when actually it was about like 5, 6 years ago, because this is when the Epstein stuff really started to come out and really started to begin to, take mainstream hold. And he was asking me about that. And, there was a carpenter there, and he immediately got angry at me for having the conversation. And like, I mean, verbally angry. He jumped up and he was like, no, that's a conspiracy. That's a conspiracy. Like, super angry. I had never seen anything like it in my life. And I looked at him, and then I showed him this. It's funny because the leftist media loves to constantly throw themselves under the bus. They do this all the time. But back in 2010, there was an article in the Guardian that stated, I've brought it up on some of my earlier shows on this channel, that stated that 144 Pentagon employees were found with child pornography on their computers. And he kind of like froze up when he saw the article, and he was like, well, we can't arrest our best men and things like that. He made up some weird excuse, and I kind of gave him a look. I'm like, dude, we're talking about pedophiles here. Like, anywho, let's get to the next explanation. It's a little bit more I'd say slightly more in depth. This one's about 3 minutes long. For the guys who are just joining me, thanks for joining in. We are going over this example of the Smith effect. I have this short little video that we are going to watch, and she kind of dives in depth about it. So let me pull it up here really quickly. I'm telling you, I know a lot of you guys have had this happen to you before. So I mean, it's just such an interesting thing. So let's kind of go over this. It's 3 minutes and 15 seconds long. I'll stop and say a few things here and there, but this is going to kind of give you the overall gist, and then we're going to get into the actual articles and the theories behind the Agent Smith effect. It's so interesting, and I know you guys feel the same way.
So you've heard of the butterfly effect and you've heard of the Mandela effect. Have you heard of the Agent Smith effect? And I think it's an important time for us to discuss this because as we go deeper down the rabbit hole, the comments from some skeptics gets unnecessarily
I think the lollipop scene is a funny one, but nonetheless, here we go.
more aggressive. So imagine you could talk about a show or a movie, maybe something like Doctor Who that deals with timelines, maybe a show like Loki that's also dealing with multiple timelines. And it's all fun and games. Wow, what a great show. What an amazing concept. But then the moment that you mention, it is possible that there's multiple timelines, and some of those timelines could have collapsed, and timelines could merge, and potentially people could mess with the timelines in the future that would affect us today. And then all of a sudden, they become glazed over and basically become a prison guard. And now the only thing.
So I like how she says prison guard, because that's almost what it is. Because you guys know that they don't have to enforce anything upon us. They have our collective and the people who buy the consensual narrative and the stuff they're feeding us nowadays. Those are the people that police us. They don't have to do anything. I'm sure a lot of you have that family member or friend, one of them who's just, what I'm saying. I have one. It's my cousin's wife. I'm not going to name names, but she lives, eats, breathes, shits, and sleeps the narrative. Thinks, Biden is the best president in the world, best choice we could possibly have, and all of those other things. So, but nonetheless, let's continue on with the video.
that matters to them is stopping you from exploring that idea and upholding some type of social obligation to society in some weird way, not even based on their own ideas or opinions. So here we go. In the Matrix, Agent Smith has the ability to enter any body at any time, and that often happens when the Matrix is threatened by Neo. This is reflected in our real world. You mention a conspiracy, and there's Agent Smith to replace the person you were just talking to and to prevent you from threatening the Matrix. These people become guardians of the Matrix, become the enforcers of mind control, indoctrination, and hold together the false concept of reality. And we've all experienced this. Just
So, I mean, kind of going back to what I was, saying before about the Billy Carson interview, where you're sitting there and you're having that conversation, whether it be with your family, your friends, or you're outside. I don't think a lot of you guys heard me who just joined, but I've had this happen to me with strangers before. I've been out in public talking with somebody, and they overheard my conversation. And the Agent Smith effect took hold. Immediately angry, interrupting. It could potentially be a really, really potent form of cognitive dissonance, honestly. But we're going to finish up the video, and then I will get into the explanations for this. This is just, like I said, a very strange thing we've all experienced.
scroll down and look through my comments. Haha, you're so stupid. No one is more condescending than the person who doesn't freaking get it. Instead of exploring the idea, they will do anything in their power to prevent you from having an idea that makes them uncomfortable. Using tactics like insults, calling them stupid, personal attacks. Let's take a look at my favorite quote.
That is true. It always, anytime you encounter an Agent Smith, or this effect happens to somebody that what usually happens is there's no debate. It's ad hominem attacks. There's no reason behind this response. It's almost like it's as if something takes this individual over, and they lose themselves.
Quote from The Matrix. Morpheus says, "The Matrix is a system, Neo, and that system is our enemy. But when you're inside, you look around, what do you see? Businessmen, teachers, lawyers, carpenters, the very minds of the people who we are trying to save. But until you do, these people are a part of that system, and that makes them our enemy. You have to understand, most of these people are not ready to be unplugged, and many of them are so hopelessly dependent on the system that they will fight to protect it." Sure.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. So, that's pretty much the gist of it. It is. It's almost as if I would call it a potent form of cognitive dissonance. But we all know and we all understand that there are metaphysical factors to this existence at hand that we have going on at this moment in time, and that are always going on. And excuse me, just because they're not in the realm of perception of the consensual reality does not mean that they are not there. So, guys, I have a really big treat. I have found an article kind of going in to the Smith effect, and this is actually a paid-for article, so I grabbed this for you guys. So I got to cancel my script as soon as this show is over, but nonetheless, yeah, I wanted you all to see this. It's very interesting. And the one thing I'm going to bring up is, you notice how she was saying that they try to stop you from diving into these ideas. Well, this happens even with spiritual evolution and personal progress. Like I was saying, we're trying to better ourselves. We're on this path of spiritual evolution where we make changes, and we try to live by this example in this path. And a lot of people, that's holding a mirror up, and that triggers the Agent Smith effect. So this is kind of what this article gets into here. I was actually was really happy to find this, and I'm sure you all will appreciate this too. So we have breaking free from the Agent Smith effect, protecting yourself from negative influences. Now, when I'm talking negative influences, we can definitely call, I feel at least at this point, that we can call the consensual narrative a negative influence at this point. I'm sure you all agree as well, because you look at it and it's anti-human, anti-freedom, anti-truth, anti-knowledge. I would say that the narrative and the scripted reality that we face every day in this world, definitely a negative influence, but nonetheless, let's keep going. So have you ever noticed when you're about to make a big change or achieve a significant goal, certain people in your life suddenly start acting differently? Perhaps they become distant, critical, or even hostile. Now, I know I've experienced all three of these: distant, critical, or even hostile. Like, I've had people just, like, silently, unfriend me, or get like really debative. And like I said, I've had these angry instances where it's just all out anger, but or maybe they start to drain your energy and bring you down, making you doubt yourself and your abilities. If so, you may have experienced what I call the Agent Smith effect. Named after the iconic villain from the Matrix movie, this phenomenon refers to the ways some people in our lives can seem to turn against us or try to hold us back when we're on the verge of a breakthrough. Whether they do it intentionally or unconsciously, their behavior can have a significant impact on our ability to achieve our goals and create the reality we desire. So, and what do we know about this negative influence, guys? We don't listen to it. There's ways to combat this. I jokingly go, calm down, Mr. Smith, or calm down, Mrs. Smith. It's okay. Like, what if this happens? You have to approach it. I do, at least in my opinion, I do believe there is some kind of energetic manifestation with it. And we will get to that after this article. But there is definitely, in my eyes, some kind of energetic manifestation when it comes to the Agent Smith effect. I think there are, because we have to look at it like this. We're consciousness. Everything exists within us. Even this, what I would say, even the archons and the demiurge are aspects of us, even though that might be a hard pill for a lot of people to swallow. But nonetheless, let's keep going. So in this post, we'll explore the concept of the Agent Smith effect and how it can affect our lives. So we're understanding the negative influences. The Agent Smith effect refers to the phenomenon where people in our lives can suddenly become energy vampires or subconsciously work to sabotage our progress when we're about to level up in the matrix. This can happen for a number of reasons, such as jealousy, fear, or simply feeling threatened by our success. So the one thing I want to bring up in this, right, when we have jealousy and fear involved, right? So in my first season, I did a show on the 7 undesirable traits. I don't say deadly. I think, when we're talking about polarity here, some of those traits have good polarities in the right sense. Not all of them, but some of them. And jealousy was one that had, next to none. I guess you could say, I mean, it did not really sway in the positive polarity at all. But, we're talking fear too. These are aspects that are dark. They have low vibrational energy. So this is what I'm talking about as far as energetic manifestation goes. So we'll get to that in just a sec. So the negative behavior can manifest in a number of ways. For example, a friend who has always been supportive may suddenly start making snide comments about our goals or achievements. A coworker who used to be helpful may become defensive and uncooperative. I've had that happen before. A family member who has always been loving and kind may suddenly start criticizing everything that we do. And this is it is even on our paths, guys, and all of you know this as well. Like we in what we do in our train of thought, in the existence that we wish to cultivate in our lives, we catch a lot of flack from our family, although there's very huge positive aspects that I think some families can get on, the spiritual nature of it and bettering ourselves in our lives. It's the crushing truths that we begin to unveil and look at as far as, this system that we're in, the scope of existence, how we could potentially have this negative energy, in these negative entities kind of ruling us in this really subconscious, subtle way. So, but nonetheless, let's get back to it. So, in the same way as we grow and evolve in the matrix of our lives, we may encounter resistance from those around us, especially from those who are not aligned with our goals or who may be intimidated by our progress. These people can be seen as the agent Smiths of our lives, trying to prevent us from leveling up and reaching our goals. So that's kind of the gist of that, guys. I will share the links. I did not get a chance. I was kind of running behind tonight, but after we get done here, I'll update the links for everything. You will have to pay for that article, but it's a good read. I'd say in that case, you are getting kind of what you pay for. So, so now I kind of want to go into the cognitive dissonance aspect of this, because some people could potentially say that the Agent Smith effect is cognitive dissonance, a really hard case of cognitive dissonance. And I completely agree. That could definitely be it. I mean, when we're talking about that topic in particular, when we see people who are shown kind of the truth, like right before their eyes in a stunning glory, blazing sun fashion, like I have people I know, this is how hard the cognitive dissonance it can get, guys, and you're going to laugh at this. I have people I know that if a real life extraterrestrial walked up to them and slapped them in the face, they would go, man, that CGI is like really lifelike, dude. Like, oh my God, like that is exactly the kind of stuff I'm talking about. I've seen people, and I personally know people like this. So let's kind of get into the Psychology Today article that I have here, and this kind of breaks it down. And then we're going to get into what I think it could potentially be. And I think you guys probably might share a similar opinion of what it could potentially be. So cognitive dissonance is a term for the state of discomfort felt when two or more modes of thought contradict each other. The clashing cognitions may include ideas, beliefs, or the knowledge that one has behaved in a certain way. So I would agree with that. The theory of cognitive dissonance proposes that people are adverse to inconsistencies within their own minds. It offers one explanation for why people sometimes make an effort to adjust their thinking when their own thoughts, words, or behaviors seem to clash with each other. I mean, you can kind of like take a look at that too. I mean, when you're told that the big thing right now that's coming out is the food. And that's been like a big thing for a while in my eyes. The food, the whole aspect of the food coming to light. I've been very passionate about that myself too from the beginning of this. I mean, the food was a huge, big thing in my awakening process. And, but it's coming to light, and there's still people that are like, oh, well, if there's nothing wrong with it, because they wouldn't give it to us if there was anything wrong with it. And I'm like, yeah, there's definitely something wrong with it. I guarantee you, if you stopped eating it for a week and ate like actual whole foods and, cooked meals that, were just those ingredients, you would be feeling marginally better. And, so this is just how the cognitive dissonance kind of comes into play, especially with even now, it's widely known that there's a lot of pedophiles, that exist in the upper echelons of government and Hollywood. So, I mean, and still people are like, no, those are just a few bad apples or whatever it is. So it's there. When one learns new information that challenges a deeply held belief, for example, or acts in a way that seems to undercut a favorable self-image, that person may feel motivated to somehow resolve the negative feeling that results to restore cognitive consonance. Though a person may not always resolve cognitive dissonance, the response to it may range from ignoring the source of it to changing one's beliefs or behavior to eliminate the conflict. So it very well, guys, could be, a hardcore form of cognitive dissonance. I don't disagree with that at all. I mean, we look at that from I guess you could say, an objective or a rational standpoint before we dive into the metaphysical aspects of what I think it could potentially be. But yeah, no, cognitive dissonance is a real thing. I think it kind of lines. I think one thing I've noticed, and you guys will maybe notice this too, is people who have a heavy amount of cognitive dissonance also have the Dunning-Kruger effect. They go like hand in hand. It's kind of interesting, right? So, all right, let's dive into what I think it could potentially be. When we're talking from a metaphysical standpoint and a spiritual standpoint, we know that the physical realm and the spiritual realm are essentially one. And what I mean by one is it's a different frequency. We are three-dimensional formats of higher dimensional entities. And there's a lot of different things like that exist here. And what I personally think that the Smith effect could be is some kind of energetic manifestation of these archons, or potentially the demiurge itself. And the reason why I feel that way is who is threatened the most. We look back by this, who's threatened the most by this whole train of thought. And yes, governments, establishments, things like that, because they want to keep their power and their control. But we look at the energetic aspects of that, the occult nature of our government and establishments, and the energies that flow through them. It leads me to believe that this could be a potential thing. So I'm going to bring up this article with you guys, and I'm sure you all are going to find this interesting. So let's get down here. We have the reality of the rulers, the hypostasis of the archons. Now, why I found this very interesting is it really kind of backs up the theory that this could be potentially what's going on with the Smith effect. I know a lot of people truly feel that this is an underlying component to our reality. As myself, I do feel like this can have a lot to do with it, especially when we see the similarities and the wide spectrum of this manifestation of the Agent Smith. Everything is a similarity when it comes to it. There's a similar cadence to the response. It's irrational, very emotional. There's ad hominem attacks. There's potentially even physical altercations can occur over this stuff. I have not had that personally happen to me per se. I've seen it though. Who knows though if it's real or not. It could be. I mean, I've seen it in videos for sure, but there could be physical altercations, especially when talking about sensitive topics such as when it comes to the military and things like that. So nonetheless, let's get back to this. So the reality of rulers is a Gnostic text whose title is also sometimes translated as the nature of the rulers, or the hypostasis of the archons. The hypostasis, a word that occurs in the original Greek title of the text, is an ancient philosophical word that refers to the inner essence of something, in order to make the title of the text easier to understand for modern readers. Hypostasis is often translated as nature, or as here, reality. In any of its variations, the title of this text is supposed to indicate that it provides readers with knowledge about the true character of the archons, or rulers, demonic beings who rule the world from the skies and try to keep the souls of humankind imprisoned in the world. It does this through story, specifically a series of episodes that are elaborations of parts of the Gnostic creation myth that illustrate the personalities, motivations, and goals of these half-witted, lecherous, sadistic beings whom the Gnostics identified with other people's gods. So, when we're talking about the archons, and we're looking at how they are the ones who try to imprison and keep the souls of humankind imprisoned in the world. Well, it very well could be the case, because, we have to think, if everything is on a consciousness level and panpsychism is what is going on here, it's this is a threat to that. Indeed, when we share knowledge and share truth, or share information with each other, and we try to ignite the spark, that divine spark in somebody who's interested, or somebody that we know. That is the ultimate threat. I've even had experiences with these things during entheogenic journeys and things like that, where they would always go, we don't care if a few of you wake up and leave, but we don't want all of you to. And it's just a very, it's interesting to me to see kind of the correlation between the energy that manifests in our, family, friends, or these strangers that we encounter, and this dark energy. So it's just very, very coincidental to me. Anywho, so the reality of the rulers assumes prior knowledge to the Gnostic creation story as told in, for example, the secret book of John. So it's extremely helpful to have read that text, or at least a summary of its creation narrative, before reading the reality of the rulers. So this is very interesting, guys. I'm actually going to kind of, like, if you guys don't mind, I'm going to dive into it just for a second. But this is the Gnostic creation myth. It's very interesting. I think everybody should give it a read, but now we'll dive into it some other time. In fact, I will probably do a show on that, because that's just a very interesting topic altogether. So the reality of rulers was written and used by the group of Gnostics that modern scholars call the classic Gnostics, or the Sethians. It was originally composed in Greek sometime in the 2nd or 3rd century AD. It was probably written in either Alexandria, Egypt, vice versa. So that's just the history of it all. And then it's very interesting how they kind of even go into this. So in my view, at least, this matter was definitively settled by Elaine Pagel's in her incisive paper, Exegesis and Exposition of the Genesis Creation Accounts and Selected Texts from the Nag Hammadi, in which she demonstrates that the reality of rulers is steeped in the theology of the Apostle Paul in such a fundamental way that the entire text is effectively an exegesis, interpretation of writings attributed to Paul. So this is just a kind of like a dive in on that, I guess. And I have an actually more detailed article we're going to get into after this, but kind of comparing, like I was saying, everybody, the similarities that we experience in these ancient Smith experiences, it very well could be a dark manifestation, some kind of energy manifesting into somebody. Because if we're really looking at it from that perspective, gnosis is ultimately what threatens this, the whole makeup of everything going on. So let's get into the archons just a little bit. I'm going to get into the demiurge just a hair too. I've gotten into the demiurge on this show before, so I'm not going to get too into that. And then we're going to come full circle through the end with the psychological take on this. And then I'm going to give, I guess, a complete summary of what I think this truly is, aside from the energetic part of this. So let's dive into the archons, which, I'm sure a lot of you are well versed in. So we're not going to go over it too much. So in Gnosticism, the archons were malevolent, sadistic beings who controlled the earth, as well as many of the thoughts, feelings, and actions of humans. So I want you guys to pay attention to this. So when we're talking about the many thoughts, feelings, and actions of humans, that these manifestations, these entities surely have a role or a hand in. This kind of really ties it all together in some ways, that this could potentially be what is going on with this. And that's what I find really interesting about it all, is that I did not know this about the archons until I read this article. I knew that they were kind of the watchers of everything going on here, but I did not know that they had a hand in the thoughts and feelings and actions of human beings. And what I'm kind of tie this back to is, kind of talking about, have you guys ever had weird situations that have kind of just like manifested themselves that were strange in energy, that just felt off or weird, that seemed to just come and derail you on your spiritual evolution or your journey, in your path for truth? it's happened to me. I'm sure it's happened to some of you guys as well. And I think it's just, something to consider when we're talking about this, that potentially these entities can manifest into multiple people at once. So, according to the Gnostic text called The Reality of the Rulers, we just went over that, the archons have bodies that are both male and female, and faces that are the faces of beasts. Thus, they are not truly male nor female, nor human nor animal. The ancients found this kind of boundary crossing to be deeply threatening. And this description of the archons implied that they were forces of chaos, so mixed up as to be the farthest that a created being could be from God. So, we're not going to get into them being oafs, but despite their sometimes lacking in competence, the archons are extremely powerful beings whom the Gnostics dreaded. The Reality of Rulers quotes Ephesians 6:12. Our contest is not against flesh and blood, rather the authorities of the world and the spiritual hosts of wickedness, to make the point that the archons were what stood between humankind and salvation. It was they whom Christ had been sent to earth to overcome. So we talk about, if you guys remember with Sarah, how Christ consciousness is what eventually casted off is what was casting off the demiurge when Jesus came, and there was other manifestations of this consciousness. So that's a very interesting kind of tie-in there. So let's get back to it. But it gets worse. Since the archons had created humans in the first place, they had created humans to be extremely susceptible to their influence and to be almost unable to resist it. Only the divine spark from heaven, which had slipped into creation despite the archons' intentions, gave people any kind of chance of resisting the archons' temptations. But only a few people, the Gnostics, were even aware of that divine presence within themselves. So we're even kind of talking back to, we're essentially, if you want to kind of wrap it up on that note, we are essentially the Gnostics at this point. When it comes to what we are experiencing, what we are, undergoing, this spiritual test, this transformational process, if you call it that. And the people who we are trying to ignite that divine spark in are resisting, and potentially the archons have something to do with that. So, and even for them, it was a tremendous ordeal to act in accordance with what that presence rather than the wishes of the archons. Most people were just the puppets of the archons, thus the normal default state of humans was literal demonic possession. All right, so a quick comment on that. I know there's a lot of people who are coming out right now and saying that they feel the Elohim are evil, or they're the ones that are against us. But it's really interesting that tie in there, that in the Gnostic view, the archons created the humans. It was not the Elohim. Or potentially I'm incorrect about that, and I will correct myself later down the road about that. But it's kind of interesting, that there's a lot of concepts that you talk about humans born into sin, a lot of these Christian concepts. But that's very interesting that maybe the previous humans that were potentially botched experiments or whatever it may be could potentially have been that way. But, nonetheless, let's get back into this, and then we're kind of going to wrap it up with one last article. And then I have some announcements for you guys and the topic that I want to talk about with all of you. So the number of archons varies across the Gnostic texts, but there are commonly said to be 7 archons whose identities and names vary as well. These 7 corresponded to the 7 planets. So this is just pretty much just wrapping it up about the archons here. So, all right, to wrap it up and make it full circle at this point, this is why I said this was kind of an interesting topic. We're still really in the theory phase of this. We don't have anybody who has done, I guess you could say, but you know what? This is where I'm at with it, and I'm sure a lot of you can agree with me on this. We all experience this. We've all experienced this, at least at some level. We don't need that. We know it's real, okay, at this point. And we know that this could potentially be one of two things, and potentially a third thing also. I'm going to bring up one last kind of article, and then I'm going to get into the announcements. This is going to be a little bit of a shorter episode tonight because, like I said, this is really just me shooting a fish in a barrel when it comes to, I guess you could say providing like a laundry list of evidence for this. I mean, what I would like to potentially do at this point is to have people on and do a conference room for these experiences. And we're going to talk about something that kind of goes along with that as well after I show you guys this article. So let's pull this up here. And what I have here is why people get mad when their beliefs are challenged. So this is kind of another perspective and another take on the cognitive dissonance aspect of what this could potentially be. So, why people get mad when their beliefs are challenged. So thousands of years ago, the earth was the center of the universe, which, it could potentially be. I don't know. Hundreds of years ago, the earth was flat. Today, we know both of these things to be false, given what we have discovered about our world and the solar system. I'm not saying that those are false. That's what this article is saying. I know there's some of you out there who do indeed believe that. And, you guys have heard my thoughts and opinions on that before. So, however, when people first started bringing the idea forward that what people believed about the earth being flat or the center of the universe was false, they were met with extreme resistance and were considered to be crazy, regardless of the fact that today we might laugh at these ideas because we know them to be false. Back then, it was so heavily believed and ingrained into people's minds. You could say there is a striking resemblance between what was happening during those times and what is happening now with those on earth who are awakening to what is really going on here on earth. So truth passes through three phases. First, it is ridiculed. Second, it is fiercely and violently opposed. Third, it becomes self-evident. I think we've seen quite a few examples of this throughout history. I mean, if we're looking at the consensual history. So every time somebody comes forth with a hardcore revelation or a hardcore truth, the general population, or people we would say today who partake in the consensual narrative, ridicule it. They don't believe it. I think a really good example of this, actually, I don't know if any of you guys used to watch Futurama when you were younger, but it was one of the newer seasons where they got sent to the second dimension. You know how we're in the third dimension right now. They got sent to the second dimension. And in the second dimension, there were these two-dimensional reptile-like beings. And I thought that was a little interesting as well. We all know Matt Groening is definitely in on it in some way, shape, or form. But that's a whole other conversation for another time. But so they're in this two-dimensional reptile reality, and they're like having to walk around them, like up on top of them and over them, because they don't have the third spatial dimension. It was kind of funny, but at the end, TLDR, at the end of it all, the professor looked at them and was like, we have to get back to the third dimension. And the reptiles were like, third dimension? That doesn't exist. And they all start laughing. But this is a prime example of exactly what this is saying. Anytime a truth or a new information kind of hits, we see it kind of in the cognitive dissonance throughout the generations too, how some of the older generations, were brought up on straight propaganda. And now we live in this new age of quote unquote information or whatever it is. And they are blindsided with all of this stuff that they were told so differently, and that's not what it was when they were growing up, and now they're blindsided with it, and this is kind of what causes that. So nonetheless, gets back to it. So we have to have the ego involved. And you guys know that dark energy comes from the ego. Dark energy can manifest from the ego. And I think that's why this kind of comes into play, because this is an ego response that we see within people. TLDR on the ego. Ego is what formulates our perception of the world too. Our beliefs tie in with that. So, when we challenge beliefs, especially when it comes to going up against the consensual narrative of this all, the ego gets involved, and through that we have that dark manifestation. To understand this process, we have to look no further than the human ego. The word ego is often associated with one's sense of pride or vanity for themselves. While these characteristics do come from the ego is more than that. The ego is a false sense of self that we believe to be who we are. Any idea or identity of concept about who we are is ego. So that just kind of ties into what I was saying about, this manifestation coming from that. And that's why, in our spiritual growth, our spiritual evolution, we've learned to have non-attachment with our ego and put it in the right place and where it needs to be. But, for those who have not started to do that yet, this can still be an issue. So the ego can also be seen as a protective layer that separates us from everyone else. While this protection is not necessary to the ego, it is the means of defending itself from the differences of others. So we're going to stop on that, because that is kind of where I'm going to sum this all up. I think it's always, as you guys have heard me say before, it always lies somewhere in the middle. We look at the trifecta of what we have going on. We have cognitive dissonance, all right, that is kind of what I would even say a more potent form of cognitive dissonance, because we're talking about shattering not just a belief or two of the individual who this energy, this Agent Smith, manifests in. We are destroying an important framework of their reality. We're destroying that. So with that, the ego, like we were talking about, gets involved. And through the ego, and when we are acting in our negative aspects of our ego, as human beings do in the human condition that we face, and we are healing, at least at a subjective level for now, but hopefully a collective level eventually. And through this can manifest these archons. And we did see that in that version of the creation story, the archons did have a hand in our creation as human beings. And they do have a responsible role for human thought, feelings, and actions. So I think that's kind of a trifecta that we have in effect at this point in time, to sum it up, honestly. And what I would really like to see is, kind of a more detailed depiction of this, available for people to read, not just an article that I had to buy on a Substack, but I mean, it's something we've all experienced, and kind of what I think I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start collecting these different experiences. And on top of that, I was going to bring this up in this episode to a particular person. So I am, I'm not only do I want to start kind of collecting those experiences, I want to start collecting this kind of experience. I don't know if you all have ever heard of the GATE program. That is this gifted program that was ran by intelligence agencies. In fact, let me see if I can pull this stuff up real fast. I do have the links here, but I find it profoundly interesting because I feel like a lot of you could potentially have experienced this. I really feel that this is something we need to look into just a tad bit more. So I'm going to add this on. Let me just send this stuff to myself, you guys, real fast. And also, too, I wanted to make this announcement to you guys. I will, starting in June, just for a little bit, I'm going to be winding down and doing only 2 shows a month. And the only reason I'm going to be doing 2 shows a month is I got some stuff in my real life that I have to take care of. And I will still be doing interviews. I'll still be doing things like that. But I will be just for a period of time, potentially till the end of the summer, just doing 2 shows. All right, I've got the photo. Let me send it to myself and then we'll pull it up, guys. Hold on. So yeah, this is going to be a very interesting thing. And I think you guys are really going to like this because I myself experienced this stuff when I was a child. I'm not getting into exactly why I experienced this stuff, but let's go over this list real quick. And then we're going to go over the CIA document really fast. So let me pull up this image here. So I don't know if you guys can see this, but these are the common characteristics of children involved in the GATE tag program. We'll get into the CIA document, but if you ever did any of this gifted testing, if you remember hearing tests like vision tests that you don't remember, or you remember a lot of this very, I guess you could say, going on trips where you were gone for long periods of time that you don't remember. This was brought to my attention by Facets TV. And I kind of wanted to just bring this up with you all real fast. So these are the common characteristics of children involved in the GATE tag program. You don't have to have, I guess, all of these, but some of these. But, blue eyes, forehead scars, occipital bun, high IQ, interested in, I guess, X strange phenomena, intuitive memory loss, particularly of that event, migraines, moral, intensely strong sense of justice. I think a lot of us feel that to some degree. Premonitions and prophetic dreams. I think a lot of us have had that degree. Birth complications, near-death experiences. All of this stuff is very interesting to me. So I actually have the CIA document here. I'm going to pull up real quick of this program. So there was I guess you can say there was it disappeared on me. Look at that. Well, nonetheless, guys, I will be doing a show on this. Thanks for bearing with me tonight. I'm a little bit tired. I've had a long week and it's only Wednesday, but that's pretty much it, guys. I will be winding down till the end of the summer by just doing 2 shows a month. I have some stuff on the back end I really need to take care of, but I will still be here. And I honestly feel it'll give me a chance to give you guys some better quality shows and some really huge deep dives on topics too for the time being. Well, I get some things straightened out. But nonetheless, guys, I want to thank you for joining me tonight. I do feel that I want to start talking to more people who have had these experiences and maybe collect something on this. So if you've had an Agent Smith experience or somebody manifesting or manifestation in somebody, whether it be a family member, a friend, or even a complete stranger, like I was telling you about in the beginning of the show, drop me a line and let me know. And other than that, guys, you have yourself a good one. I will be back next week. We are going to be breaking down a pretty interesting spiritual concept, and I will let you guys know what that is on Sunday, like I usually do. So other than that, take care, guys. Have yourselves a good night, and thank you again for joining me for another BG Cast Wednesday Live podcast. Take care, everybody.